he punches him as hard as he can, like 40 times.
Yeah.
Little John's face should be gone. Little John should be dead. And Little John is still moving and doesn't look that fucked up for the beating that Teddy put on him. Can Teddy throw a punch?
It's
Doesn't
like
seem like it.
you're saying it's like his bark's worse than his
I'm
bite.
saying he's a little bitch. Yeah, I mean, you and Taylor have really convinced me that he kind of sucks.
I finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
I
finally
Watched.
I
finally
Watched.
I finally
Watched.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and I finally watched The Equalizer.
I got to tell you that I am so happy that we are out of Spike Lee month because I had a lot of, I can't say fun watching them. Like, I really enjoyed the 5 movies we did, but all like fairly intense watches in their own right. The Equalizer is such a fun watch. We're going to do 4 Denzel movies this month, and starting with this one is just, this isn't like a great movie, but it's like an awesome watch. You know, it's like it's in the John Wick lineage, and
Yeah.
although this was a TV show first, but like it's just, you know, those type of movies are just fun.
It reminds me of those did you ever see Red with Bruce Willis?
I saw the first one. I don't
Yeah.
remember it very well.
Yeah, same. But I know it's old guy comes out of like retirement from being like super secret agent to kick ass. And I was like, this is kind of like John Wick. Old guy comes out of super secret retirement to kick ass. Equalizer, super secret retirement to kick ass. But this one is kind of different in the sense that it's I feel like, okay, this is coming from someone who has seen none of the John Wick movies, so I'm probably totally wrong in saying this.
Are you joking?
I haven't, well, I've seen like the first one, I guess I have, kind of. But
Kind of. You need to figure that out, bud, because
yeah,
there's some
yeah.
movies we could do.
Well, anyways, I was just saying that this one seems a little bit more melodramatic.
It's self-serious, and so I haven't seen 3. I was going to try and watch it before we did this, but kids. And I've seen 1 and 2 5 to 10 times each.
Jesus.
And just like those, I've said this before, those Mission Impossible, Bourne movies, those are great movies to put on like in the background during work because you don't have to pay attention a lot. If you want to take like a little mental break, you can watch, you know, Jason Bourne break someone's arm, or Tom Cruise flying
Break
on,
someone's arm.
no, on a plane, you know, hanging on the outside of it. And this is another good example. The movies take themselves very self-serious. I think I said a while back, like, you know, Denzel sort of has this air about him of like he kind of fancies himself a philosopher. And I think this movie is like a big reason, like I kind of feel that way. Because especially in the second one, which I don't know if we'll ever do, or if we do, it'll be a while from now.
The second Denzel month.
Yeah, or we can just do it next week. But there's just a lot of like advice giving in this movie, like about like eating too much sugar and then like potato chips, and then but just like in the second one, there's a lot of, he takes a young black guy under his wing and is like, you know, giving him advice and gets mad at him when he gets caught up in drugs and violence. And the movie is definitely self-serious, and there are some times where it's just like bordering on kind of parody, the way it like shoots things in this one especially. But it's also just so fucking badass that it's like, I'm going to bring up a lot of things that don't make sense, but at the same time, I love this movie. So like, it's fun to pick apart, but at the end of the day, I'm probably going to watch this 10 more times in the next few years too.
So I actually took notes while I was watching this.
Fuck, you did, really?
Yeah, I know. There was a lot of things to make fun of this movie, and it's almost like, I feel like if it wasn't Denzel, and if the movie didn't take itself so seriously, this could actually be a bad movie. But
without Denzel, it would be a bad movie for sure.
there's so many tropes that bad movies like this kind of fall into, that this falls into, but there is just something about a little bit extra care that the writers took, and maybe even Denzel took, to make sure that the bar didn't drop too low, right? So it stayed up here. It actually ended up being really good. But there was a lot of times where it was like, is it gonna fall? No, you know. Um, One of those is the trope where it's like the Russians, right? Like the fucking Russians with the unlimited amount of uh um henchmen. That was one for me that I was like, is it gonna do that?
Well, the thing is, nowadays it always has to be the Russians because they're white, and they're the only group that's not going to complain that you depicted them as bad guys.
I
So it
think,
always has to be
yeah,
the Russians from now on. It
or
can't
the
be anybody else.
could be the Chinese.
No,
No.
Babylon. It
Oh,
cannot be.
okay.
It can. I mean, yeah, it can. You know what
Well,
I mean?
I
It can
guess
be whatever
it
you
doesn't.
want.
Well, it doesn't even have to be the Chinese. It could be the Koreans. The Koreans is probably like North Korea. You could always make them the villains.
Unless you want an interview situation where they're like, "We're gonna fucking come down on you," although nothing ever happened with that.
I'd
So
like to see North Korea come down on us. Come on.
shut the fuck up, dude. What if
we
what if
we
what if
literally.
Kim
I
what
look
if
at.
Kim Jong like listens to this? And he's like, they better watch their fucking mouths.
No. I know Kim Jong hasn't listened to us because I've looked at our analytics and we don't have a single listener in North Korea.
He's probably got a VPN. You know what I was looking at is so Antoine Fuqua has a very interesting career with like a lot of borderline B movie stuff, but also
Yeah.
just movies I love. So the first thing that I mean, he directed The Replacement Killers, which is kind of a beloved action movie that I have not seen. That's one we should do. Honestly, we could easily do a very fun Antoine Fuqua month, and Equalizer 2 could be in it.
Well, we're
But
halfway there. We're halfway there because we're doing this movie
and
and
Training
we're
Day.
in Training Day. So
So, well, let's switch it up. Then he did the movie Bait with Jamie Foxx, where it's sort of like that Will Smith, Gene Hackman movie, Enemy of the State, but like more funny because it's got Jamie Foxx. And then Jamie Kennedy works in the control room. Right after that, he did Training Day. Then Tears of the Sun, which is a really good Bruce Willis, war movie. I think set in Africa. And
I
then
I just thought of
Shooter.
oh yeah,
Sh-
Shooter.
I love Shooter. Shooter's not a good movie, but I love Shooter.
I saw Shooter recently. It was one of those like I have nothing to do on a Sunday afternoon. Like the wife is doing something, and so I just turned it on, and I was just like, it was not well, I watched it when I was quite a bit younger, and I was like, wow, this is so cool, so badass. And now watching it again, I was like, eh.
Shooter is similar to Equalizer in that there are a lot of parts that you're just like, fuck yeah. And there are a lot of parts that are like, that's weird. Why did you do it that way?
So
Like,
yeah, okay. I think there's less in this movie than Shooter.
less weird parts.
Less parts like where you're like, yeah.
I mean, I disagree. And I think let's just get into it. So, one thing that I like is this movie tries to not just like, bam, action, plot, 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 but it also does that, right? Like, so for example, it has like a bunch of like B-roll of him like getting ready to go to work, and it shows where he goes to work to establish that. I love like the honing in on the New Balances he wears because he just dresses like a complete dork. That's like what it shows him
He
dressing
dresses
as.
he dresses like an old man, like an average Joe.
So then he goes to work, but like he goes to this diner all the time. And so it shows him go to the diner, and then it shows like a montage of quick cuts, and then he's back at the diner the next night, quick cuts, back at the diner. Like it just moves the story along very quickly, but it tries to act like as if it's not just like focusing solely on this. Like it's really there's only one plot to this entire movie. Like there's not like a lot of side fat.
There is, but there's also like the lingering question of who is he? What did he do exactly before he worked at fucking Home Depot? And I think those shots of him like showing him getting ready in the morning shows not only is he severely OCD,
Right.
but he's also like militant, like in his time, like not just in his time consumption, but like how he brushes his teeth, makes his bed, gets dressed, ties his shoes. So you know he has to have some sort of military background.
Yeah, and apparently he added all the OCD stuff in himself because he's like, I don't need this guy to have something. And like, there's also you don't really understand why he can't sleep until later on in the movie. You realize he's like, I've done a bunch of bad stuff, and that sort of weighs on him. And like the fact that his wife is gone and she didn't really approve of what he was doing. But the movie makes it seem like he doesn't sleep ever.
Yeah.
But he then always just goes to the same diner, and he's like so fastidious in the way he folds his napkin perfectly to fit the thing in there, to then go in the jacket, to then just set it up right, perfectly on the table, because it is like the OCD that he's sort of playing up.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get to meet Terry, or was it
Alina.
Alina, played by Chloe Grace Moretz. I gotta say, she's a pretty good actress. I don't know if she was given the best work of her career in this movie to do.
Well, that's obviously Hit Girl. So
It is, well, yeah. I mean, first thing I saw her, it was 500 Days of Summer, and she was awesome in that. So apparently, the person, this role was going to be for someone older, and she was only like 16 when she filmed this, but she was like, I really want it, and so she auditioned, and they like changed the age of the part, which really
I
does add, it adds to it,
there's
especially with like
something
Slavi.
there's something about a 16-year-old prostitute that that
Go on.
that really makes you feel for her, you know?
Well, and it makes you more disgusted by the whole thing too, right? Like, I mean, they're already sort of sex trafficking these people, but then when Slavi, who fucking from Justified, is like, I get more for young girl because I can say she's virgin. I make this in 2 weeks, what you're offering me right here. So, it just makes the whole thing sort of more disgusting. This movie is very raw too. You don't feel that way, but then, like, a lot of the kills are like fucking horror movie kills, right? Like, he
Yeah,
sticks a drill in the back of a dude's head.
but it doesn't show it, right? It's not as blatant with its violence it is blatant with the violence, but it's not as blatant with the gore. Like you don't see him like it reminds me in the first fight scene in the room where he takes down like 8 dudes. You see him stab the dudes, but everything is a little bit in shadow.
Yeah, I mean, except for that corkscrew. It's right in the dude's throat.
Yeah, except for that. You're right. Except for that, that was pretty like right there. But
So he's talking.
still not that much blood, really.
Yeah, so he's talking with Chloe Grace, and she's talking to him about his book. He's like, I hope he catches that fish, as she goes off to go, hook.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's one quick scene of him saying that he used to be a pip with Gladys Knight, and then he's right back at the diner, and she has to go out with this disgusting, putrid, smelly pig of a customer. She's like, please don't make me do that. And she goes, and then another couple quick cuts, and then we're back at the diner, and she has a black eye.
So one thing I wanted to talk to you about is the analogies and the comparisons to The Old Man and the Sea, and then the Equalizer.
Is she the fish?
No. It's just funny how it's like, okay, it's for me at least it's so on the nose on like, do you get it? Do you get it, audience? Like he's the old man and the Russians are the fish. And when we say the old man's got to be the old man and fish got to be fish, we're talking about this movie. It's like okay, good job. You made an old a literature analogy reference thing. And then later when they're walking down the sidewalk, they're like, this guy's just pretending to be a shining knight where there's no more knights in this world anymore. And it's like, yeah, okay, fuck, dude, we get it.
I never got the old man in the sea thing, so
The
that's
old
not
man
why I
in the
came into this movie.
The old man in the sea reference? Because then later, after everything's gone down, we see him in the diner again reading The Invisible Man.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you gotta
So
let him have his flourishes. So he decides to start taking an interest in her because she walks over there to sit with him, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't. Am I allowed to do this?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, it's fine." And they start walking around the city, and then Slavi pulls up. And what's interesting is he slaps her, and you see kind of Denzel take a step, and she's like, "No, no, no, it's okay, don't do anything." It's almost like, why did she know he was going to do something? Like, why was she so certain he was? I guess because she knows he's a good person and that
Yeah,
he'd
I think
probably want to
that's it.
stop it.
I think that's it.
But I was like, I don't know why, you know. But this all, so then he finds out that, a couple nights, it's once again, quick cuts. He goes to the diner. She's not there. Quick cuts, goes to the diner. The diner owner's like, hey, she got beat up. She's at the hospital. He goes to the hospital and her friend Mandy is there. And she's like, yeah,
So
Slavi beat her up.
I didn't know that Terry got out of this alive. So I thought the reveal was going to be that she fucking got murdered. And then this whole thing was like the revenge. He goes on a revenge
Like the
spree.
dog in John Wick.
Yeah. But he goes on a revenge spree for her. Which he does, but she's not killed.
It's basically to save her life, like, right? Like if she'd been dead, he probably would have just killed those people in the club, like in the Russian restaurant, and then just sort of disappeared. You know what I mean? Like never to be found. But
Yeah.
there's actually a really funny part of this whole movie is that if they had just allowed him to kill those guys and they had just like not been like, oh, this is a big conspiracy, it's gonna ruin our Russian oligarchs' business. If they just left it well enough alone, nothing else would have happened. Things would have just kept running.
What do you think would have happened if Slavi just took the $9,800?
I think it would have been over, but I'm also sure Denzel knew he wasn't going to take the $9,800.
There's this really cool parallel in the movie. I'm going to mention it at the end, but I'm just putting in the seed right now.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's called a tease.
Yeah.
So this is the best scene in the movie, and there's also like a lot of like the dialogue. I'm like, what the fuck's going on? He keeps calling him Dedushka, which I finally looked up means grandfather, so he's just calling him old.
Oh man, yeah.
And he offers him $9,800 because he didn't want to get it flagged for taking $10K out of his bank or whatever. He'd have to fill
Why
out
not
some forms.
$9,999?
I guess because that also looks suspicious too. You know what I mean? You got to keep lowering it because they're like, oh, well, now 9,700 looks suspicious. So what's funny is the badass part of this is Slavi really starts to try and intimidate Denzel, and Denzel's expression does not change. Like it does nothing. It's expressionless. And he's like, all right, fine. I'll let you, shake my hand. And he's like, but for 1 month. And he's like, I make this amount off of her in 2 weeks. And then he says, why don't you go jerk off 9,800 times and then come back and talk to me? And I was like, that line makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then he
you know how
says, and
long
then
it would take you to jerk off 9,800 times?
he's like, and by the time you finish, come back and then she'll be used up. And it'll just be like, you don't know my powers. Like, I'll be back next week. Like, it's fine.
He's been able to jack off 9,800 times in a week.
He's like, he's a professional. And then he points the skulls at them and they're just like, what the fuck is going on? I also feel like there's a lot of times where Denzel does stuff and people would have shot him a lot quicker than
points the skulls at them.
Yeah, on the desk there's 3 skulls and he points one at Slavi, one at the guy with the Jesus hair, and then one at the other guys. He like rotates them like, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead. And they just like look at it and laugh at him.
Oh, I thought he was just fiddling with them. I thought he was gonna fucking grab one and like fucking knock.
There's too many other good weapons. And then he goes to the door and he like slams it a few times and then locks it. And there's this Sherlock Holmes moment where he almost envisions what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And he says 16 seconds.
Okay, good. I'm glad we're talking about this.
16 seconds. He then slices up, takes the gun, shoots Slavi in the neck immediately, slices up another guy, fucking takes a shot glass and sticks it in a dude's eye, And then the corkscrew scene is great. And then I love how he has to let the guy know as the corkscrew's in there, like, I speak Russian, motherfucker. As he kills the guy, he's got to let him know. Then he goes up to Slavy and he's like, you're going to be dead. Well, oh, before this, let's get to the math. He says 16 seconds and then looks at his thing and says 28. And he's like, all right, 28 minus 9. I don't know where 9 comes from, but then that gets him to 19,
Yeah.
which means he was 3 seconds slower than he should have been. So he's like, "Ugh, I'm a little slow." But I still don't understand why you just get to take off 9 seconds. Is it because you were like watching him die? Like, I don't understand.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. I thought he was like, because he goes up to him and he's like, you're gonna die a slow, painful death, and you're gonna suffocate, in like he gives him an arbitrary number, right? And I was like, is that the rest of the seconds that make up for the 29? Like, is he?
Despite his OCD, he doesn't seem to be very good at math. Because the other thing he says to Slavia as he's dying, he's like, you're going to die right here on this funky floor, and she's going to go on and live, but you're going to die over $9,800. And it wasn't over $9,800. It was over $9,800 every 2 weeks for several years. So it was like actually a lot of money. It wasn't the $9,800 that he died over.
No, but I got what he was saying out that. He was saying that if you just took the $9,800 a one-time purchase price, and just let.
That's not how business works.
No, I know, but that's what he's
That's
saying.
not how the
though.
hooking game works, Alon.
Well, you would know.
I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. But am I offended by this?
You're either a pimp or a hoe.
There's also there's this like through line of like him helping other people. So he's helping the security guard lose weight, which, by the way, security guard's eating a sandwich with bread, but he gets mad that there's 4 chips on there. It's like those
That's
4
a whole
chips.
wheat gluten-free bread, motherfucker.
It's calories in, calories out, man. So the security guard made weight. He's at 247. I was like, he looks pretty big for 247, so he must be somewhat short, I would guess. Ashley and I were watching the Santa Claus the other day, back during Christmas.
The original?
And yeah, the OG. And when he's like at his fattest, he goes to the doctor's office and he weighs like 197. It's like, holy shit, we're so fat now. 197, he's like, what's wrong with me? I'm gonna die.
Well, I mean, it's also he gains it like pretty much in a second.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
So next,
that's how fat Santa is.
Next, we get Teddy brought in, who is played by Martin Chokash, who we last saw in Kingdom of Heaven. He's he's one of the dudes. I don't have to explain it really. One of the guys. But he's a Russian fixer, and he wants to go to the murder scene. And this is some pretty badass dialogue where he tells them to take him home, and fucking Harper from Stranger Things is like, what, do I look like a fucking chauffeur? And pulls his gun out. And he's like, okay, I apologize. But, I'm on a tight schedule, and I've been brought in here to fix
Harper.
up.
You say Harper?
Yeah.
Harbor.
David Harbour, but isn't his name Harper? What's his name in the show? Hopper.
Hopper.
Hopper, yeah. Anyway, Hopper from Stranger Things. Maybe
you took his character name and is that real last name and merged.
I was just pronouncing it with the Boston little
Hoppa. Speaking of accents, his was not that great in this movie.
He kind of gave up on it quite a bit and was just like, I'm just going to be David Harbour. But I like, he's like, Mr. Pushkin sends me to fix things when you guys fuck up. And basically just like puts them in their place of like, so I'm not going to ask you please and thank you. And the one line that's great is like, you think you matter. You don't. Only I matter. So fucking good.
We were built up to think that this guy is really intimidating, really a bad dude. Like really scary, right? And there's so much suspense and tension in the scene where he's with the other Russian girl. And he has this like Fabergé egg music box, and he gets up and gets her water, and there's a shot under the table of the glass table looking up at her. This is when we find out that she lied to him about, well, we knew about this, but she lied to him about Alina seeing her last.
Just knowing her. Yeah.
And she actually even gave all of the information that she had about Bob, Denzel's character. Um, one of the best lines in this movie is when Chloe Grace says, "Bob watches TV, Robert reads books."
Yeah.
I was like, "That's so funny," um, and true. But so we get her death scene, and he chokes her out,
Really rough.
really rough. But I was watching this with Taylor, and Taylor made a good point. Like at the climax at the end, most of the killing is done by the goons, and he's only killed people in like super vulnerable positions. So we actually haven't really gotten a sense of like, can he handle the Equalizer? Because we've
Is he
seen.
good at his job?
What do you mean?
Is Teddy a good Russian fixer? We haven't seen very little evidence of it. Is that what you're saying? That's the point you're making?
Pretty much.
He killed a young Russian girl. That's pretty much it. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, security guard quits. Electrical fire at his restaurant. Denzel's immediately like, "This is suspicious."
You don't want to know what I thought during this scene.
I do now. I wasn't asking until now.
I thought because he had like this tendency to be like, oh, I don't know if I can do the security guard thing. And then he quits. And I was like, that's really weird.
You just thought he was gonna be found eating like ice cream and chips.
No, worse. I thought it was implying that he set fire to his own mother's restaurant so that he would have the excuse to go and quit and work with her. Because Denzel visits him, right? And he looks up at the gas pipe or whatever, and he looks at it like we're supposed to know. I don't know what gas pipes normally look like, but I think we're supposed to look at it like this was not an accident.
And then the scene after this where he's like, "What happened, Ralph?" He's like, "Electrical fire, but who's gonna believe that?"
Yeah,
Like
but
you're like, "Oh." And then when the dirty cops show up at the restaurant and say, "Hey, this could happen again," you were like, "Oh, that makes so much more sense than my idea."
well, I was just thinking like it's really funny if they're going to go down this like really weird if they're going to go down this path, but the dirty cops and how like they mix it in with like all the cops in New York are dirty, but in like different factions.
This is Boston.
Is it Boston?
Yeah, we're in Boston.
Oh.
So
Why did I
Teddy
think
meets
New
the
York?
Irish, and Hopper gives him one piece of advice, which is don't call him Little John. This is also one of my favorite scenes.
This is a good
Uh,
scene.
But it also, like, once again, is Teddy good at his job? So he is getting Little John's talking shit to him, and he just sort of lets it happen. And then finally he's like, "Well, I appreciate your candor, which lets me know you're not smart enough to have done this." And then he's like, "But moving on to other matters," and he starts drawing a map, and he's like, "And we know that you're going to steal 10 to 15% because you people are such cliches, Little John." And he's like, "What the fuck?" He then hits him over the head with a ashtray and starts punching him. He has so much trust
Yeah.
that David Harbour is going to be able to kill these two guys before they shoot him.
Yeah.
Way too much trust for someone who
Way-
should be better at his job.
Way too much trust. But gotta give credit where credit is due. And him beating the fuck out of the Irishman while the baseball game plays in the background, and you hear the announcer being like, and he's beating the hell out of that ball as he's beating the hell out of the Irishman. And he's like, swing and a miss. And then you have David Harbour shooting them and like kicking the shotgun from him. And like how the announcer to the baseball game parallels with what's happening in that trailer is actually like, that was like good filmmaking. And it's parts like that in this movie that I'm like really raises the bar of this film.
Yeah. The other thing, he was like, we expect you to steal. And we also are okay with you being a rat to the feds. Here's another, is Teddy good at his job? He punches him as hard as he can, like 40 times.
Yeah.
Little John's face should be gone. Little John should be dead. And Little John is still moving and doesn't look that fucked up for the beating that Teddy put on him. Can Teddy throw a punch?
It's
Doesn't
like
seem like it.
you're saying it's like his bark's worse than his
I'm
bite.
saying he's a little bitch. Yeah, I mean, you and Taylor have really convinced me that he kind of sucks. Because I actually think he's actually like a pretty great bad guy, like very well established. The tattoos, the way he speaks so eloquently, but he does. You see, one of the issues with these type of movies is like, how do you have you want your character to be such a badass,
Yeah.
but you also have to have him struggle a little. That's like the give and take. And so in order for the villain to be great, you need to see the villain be great, but also he can't like diminish the greatness of your main guy. And so in this, while Teddy seems so menacing, you're right, like, his actions.
Dude, if the ending played out differently, you would literally have Teddy killing a fat security guard and then dying immediately after. Like he really has done nothing. Like it doesn't make any sense when you have the ending of the movie, and I am jumping ahead here, but it makes more to the point. Is that you have a goon chasing down Denzel, our main character. And then you have Teddy, our main antagonist, chasing down the fat security guard. And it's like, shouldn't it be the other way around?
Well, Teddy didn't know where. He was just going to like the boxes,
No, no,
the
no. But I
breakers
mean,
at the
like,
back.
writing wise, shouldn't it have been the other way around?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Although I will say that
You're the one on this pod who likes to rewrite every movie we do. You're like, what if they did it this way?
I will say the spray paint cans and the microwave explosion was super cool.
Yes, I agree. So, but that's the end of the movie. So we're now at the scene where he confronts the cops in the back, and once again, he like puts a lot of trust that these cops just don't like shoot him immediately, and these are dirty cops who would just like kill him and be like, yeah, he did something bad. You know what I mean?
That did seem like a little bit like weird. Like he's in the corner and he shines a flashlight. He's like, "Hey, officers!" And they're like, whoa, hey, what the fuck?"
Yeah, and you should have been tipped off that this was Boston because they say, "Why don't we throw you in the Mystic River?"
Yeah, I know. I thought it was New York.
Damn, you don't even
Yeah.
know what New York feels like and looks like. So,
Oh, there's one thing. Are we talking about the cops real quick? Because there's one thing that they said that's pretty awesome.
what?
Um, he calls them when they're in their car and they just left him. Right? He's like behind them a few feet back,
Yeah,
and he calls them and he's like, "I got to report two dirty cops." And then one cop who picked up the phone is like, "It's the guy," and the other guy goes, "What, that guy?" I don't know. Just some. There's some delivery about him being like, "You know that guy?" It was great.
so Denzel beats the shit out of the cops, and he's like, "You're supposed to protect and serve, punk. Did you forget that?" Like, basically, like, "Hey, man, you're supposed to. Cops are supposed to be good." Um, and then it shows him walking away, and a voiceover of him explaining to them what they have to do to avoid the tape coming out. And I'm just like, that looks cool, but like in reality, how did that happen? Wouldn't he have just told them that right there to their
I think he did.
faces?
I think he did. I think it was just edited to make it not seem like that. But I
But
think
it's weird.
well, what's also weird is that she gets all the money back, and she's holding the money. She's like grasping the money as she walks to the front of her shop. I'm like, lady, this is Boston. Do not be like,
To watch
wait.
them to watch, I mean, you've never been to Boston, but to watch the cops walk away and be like, I hope they really leave.
Oh, another thing the cop said was he goes, that hurt. Giving her back the money hurt more than getting beat up.
Yeah, it hurt more than the beating. So the next scene that's kind of importance is the dude robs Homart, and you can see Denzel's about to do something, but he doesn't stop him because he sees the little kid. I find it interesting that like we just see after the ring's given up, he does the police report, goes to get a hammer, and then the next time we sort of see him bringing the hammer and putting it back, and like the ring, the lady finds her ring. And it's like, why? Like, is it best to put the hammer back? Like, did you clean it off? Like, we see him wiping it as he's putting it back, and it's like, is that enough? Did you clean the DNA off of it before? The guy also, he must have killed two guys, right? Because like the guy got in on the passenger side and the car took off immediately. So there must have been a getaway driver too, right?
Yeah.
And did
There
you see
was.
like the
There
cool
was.
camera work of the water underneath the car? Like it hones in on the car's tires moving, and like it almost looks like it changes to like more nighttime, and then the car speeds off, and he watches it, and he checks the license plate.
Yep.
So you didn't notice it at
No,
all.
I did. I did notice it. I did. I just don't know what you want me to say about it. I wanted
Did
to
you
talk.
think it was cool?
Yeah, it was cool, man. I wanted to talk more about the hammer because I think he stole that hammer. You can't buy that hammer, right? You got to steal the hammer, you got to do the deed, and then you got to put it back without anyone realizing it's you stole that hammer. So that when some sucker fucking buys that hammer, goes home and like fucking puts a nail in through a wall, uh he's going to be framed for that dude's murder.
I think you just clean the hammer enough to where there's no DNA on it.
I don't know. It's pretty genius though, right? Like use a weapon that's going to be
There's
purchased,
cameras all over that store.
but maybe it looks less suspicious since he's an employee there.
Yeah, I mean, also
He's
it's
like,
just like it's a hammer. It's not as if it's a gun where they're gonna do like a fucking test on the hammer, be like the exact grooves of this hammer matches smashed skull.
you seen no episodes of CSI?
I've seen a lot. I
That's
don't
like
think
every CSI episode is like
is a hammer. They're
it's
like, yeah, it's hammer.
no, but they're like, what made these lacerations? Oh, it was an ice pick from that guy, and then it ended up being that
I
guy.
know. First of all, CSA is wildly inaccurate. All right, let's go to another one of the best scenes of this movie. Denzel's back at his apartment, and he sort of hears something outside. He goes up to the door, and he opens it before Teddy can. And the back and
I
forth
don't even know
between them,
how that happened.
because he could hear him coming. He's a fucking trained CIA agent.
Is that what we get from that?
That he's a trained CIA agent. That's it's spelled out more in Equalizer too, but yeah, that's what he
Mm.
used to do. Um, and also he talks to Melissa Leo, and she's like, "I don't work for the agency anymore." So she would
Dude,
have said
Bill Pullman in this movie, I was just like not expecting it.
first 2 minutes
He
with
gets
nothing to do. He gets a
the
little more to do in
pull,
the second.
the pull. Oh, he comes back. He pulls through in the second. Bill Pullman.
Boo. Yeah, thanks. So this is a great scene. He starts questioning him, and he's like, I was there. He's like, there was a murder at a restaurant. She's like, yeah, I was there the other night. And he's like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, you wouldn't be here if I wasn't.
So smart.
Yeah. And he's like, there's five. He says, I went there for what, Pierogies. He's like, well, there's 5 authentic Russian restaurants within walking distance. I was like, really?
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe Boston has like a Russian influx or something.
And then he's like, you didn't, well, according to this movie, you didn't stay long. I didn't check my watch.
Yeah.
And then, like, as he's leaving, he's like, how'd you find me? How'd you find me? I paid cash. I didn't talk to anyone. How'd you find me? He's like, this is what we do. He's like, who's we who? We who? And then as he walks away, he's like, officer, you going to give me a card? Isn't that what you guys do? Like, all of that is so good. But then it's like, it is the cat and mouse of like, they both know, they're both cats, and they both know, like, this guy's not right.
they're they're both cats. I like that clarification. I also really like how I'm putting together in my head. I was like, oh, he must be ex-military, like super military trained. And then when he goes and he's doing the background research on Robert, they're like, there's no military record of him, and Nikolai is just like all fabricated, all lies. Like this is covered up beyond covered up.
Yeah. So the next scene is the diner, and he's told them, I don't want any witnesses, which I don't really understand because Pushkin's also told him to make this loud. So, like, why do you not want witnesses? But this guy comes in, and Robert's like, are we waiting on someone else? He's like, what are you saying? He's like, your hands. You don't work with electrical wires if you have those hands. And then just kills the dude breaks the dude's neck with a book.
You know what book?
Was it The Invisible Man?
I was gonna make up some bullshit about it being Grey's Anatomy or something.
Well, maybe you should have planned it better. And then he sort of walks away, and he's like taking photos of them in the car, and he's like, no witnesses. And
Can we also talk about the really quick knife in the electric socket to black out the whole building?
pretty pretty fucking good. It was a little bit fortuitous that a Boston once again, a Boston Herald truck drove through the thing. Boston Herald being delivered to New York City, according to you. Um, that was a little fortuitous, but yeah, then he sort of beats one guy up. They go to his apartment and he's like laid the foundation that he's traveling. Like he bought tickets, he's got all these little traveling things, and like some of his guys are like, "Oh, yep, he's gone. Let's go to the airport." And he's like, "He didn't fucking go anywhere.
It was
He's
all the new
watching us."
it was all the crooked New York cop or sorry, crooked Boston cops that thought that he left, but the Russian knew better. Um,
I do think it would be funny if like what we already talked about, like Teddy being bad at his job. If he's like, "Nah, that's fake. He's not going anywhere," and then just cuts to him at the airport, like at the duty free stand.
Oh, that'd be really funny. Although I do like it that you see him building all this, you don't know what, but it's like it's cameras, right? It's small cameras that he's
Yeah.
planting all over his apartment. But I thought it was a bomb. I thought he was gonna home alone this apartment complex with like explosions. Um, but he doesn't. He does. Do you think he owns that house across the street? Like, what is up with that?
It's probably just an empty. I mean, he probably has a shit ton of money because he worked for the CIA and he probably got some like hazard type pay. You know what I mean? So he probably can afford. Maybe it's a short term rental, like an Airbnb type situation that he's gone over there.
You think it's that? Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. But he has all these monitors set up and
Don't
everything.
ask questions. Don't ask questions.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool, and he gets a read on all of them. I also thought it was really cool that like when David Harbour thought it was clear, like the house was empty, he starts calling everyone by their name. Hey, Patterson. Hey, whatever. And then I was like, oh fuck, that's awesome. He has their name now. But it doesn't matter. It's fortuitous because they fucking die in the next scene.
Yeah. Well, so the next scene is he goes to Melissa Leo, who is a consultant for the CIA. I guess used to work there, and it's not really well established that this is the scene where she figures out that he's still alive.
But it's not his wife, right?
No, no, it's Bill Pullman's wife, but they were really, really close friends. And in one part, when she leaves to go talk to the CIA, she's like, "I don't work for the agency anymore. I can't. I don't have much pull." Which she then leaves and then comes back on probably a CIA helicopter. But anyway, in that scene, Bill Pullman's like, you know, she always knew you probably weren't dead. Your funeral, the casket was closed or whatever. And it's like, so she just found out today or last night that he's still alive.
I was confused about that. So did his wife think that he was dead
They all
before she
did.
died?
Everyone did. He faked his own death so that he could either. I can't remember if his wife was dead when he faked his own death, but he faked his own death to get away, and no one knew, or just his wife knew.
So you're clueless on what actually happened also.
What are you talking about?
Well, you're, you're like, I don't know if his wife knew or didn't
His
know, or he died
Denzel's
before she died or
no,
after
no,
he.
no. Denzel's wife, Melissa Leo, thought he was dead
No,
until that meeting.
I understand that. I understand that. But what I'm saying is that it's important to know if Denzel's wife was alive when he faked his death,
Why? Why is it important to know?
because that means he either lost all contact with her before she passed away.
No, he didn't lose all. If he faked his death and she was still alive, he went with her. Like he didn't leave her in the lurch too. He
You
faked his death.
sure?
Yes,
Okay.
as someone who's seen the two movies, yes, like he didn't do that.
Well, then then he should have faked her death too.
Okay. Anyway, moving on. Just watch two and then come to me with your questions.
Okay.
Um, so he goes to her and it's just once again these really quick scenes and she's like, what's the deal? And he's like, oh, I'm looking, who's this guy? And she's like, I don't have much pull. And then she immediately goes to Washington and gets information, comes back on a helicopter. She's like, this is Teddy, this is Pushkin, this guy it's funny, she works for the agency knows this guy owns so many politicians. They're like, but we're not going to do anything about it. So, and then as he leaves, Bill Pullman's like, what was he asking for help? She's like, no, he was asking for permission. And I was like, I don't know that he was asking for permission either. He was just making sure he was killing the right people, but he wasn't asking you if it was okay.
Yeah. Although that's kind of like permission to him, right? Because there's this whole thing about his wife not agreeing to what he's been doing. So maybe he's like, I just maybe working for the CIA, it was a little gray on like, what is he killing actually bad people? But now he knows for sure he's killing bad people.
In this situation, yeah. So he goes over to David Harbour's and sort of puts him in a car with a hose. The way the camera follows the hose from the exhaust into the car, I was like, that's like a David Fincher shot. You know what I mean? Like following it all the way up. It reminded me of Panic Room, which we're gonna do eventually.
It actually
Um,
it reminded me of Ari Aster Midsommar, where at the beginning where it shows the hose from the garage to the parents' room.
fuck. That's like might be the. I mean, definitely it was dark, like visually, but that's probably the darkest scene in that movie.
Oh yeah, easily.
So fucking. Oh, it's awful.
Um, so I love it, right? So he actually staged this to look like a suicide if things don't work out.
It
And
was gonna work out either way for him.
yeah. But I love David Harbour is like it's like you are in so much fucking trouble. You are so screwed as the window goes up.
Fuck you, pal.
And then he's like, I'm just gonna leave for a second. I'll be right back. And then he's like, don't leave me here. Cut to like a hard cut to him being like
Going
busting
into
that
this,
going
yeah, they're
into
going
the
to this one place,
yep.
and he's like, "Oh, I like that gun. Can I see it?" Just takes it out of the dude's hand. He's like,
I watched that scene twice.
your men are very loyal, so when you tell them to put their guns down, they're gonna do it." And he does it, locks them all up, and then he's like, "Hey, I need to know what your escape plan is." And he's like very like purposefully like, "I need to know your like." He's like, I guess at first I was like, he doesn't want to leave him with anything. I was like, why does he so like insistent on, I want to know where your money you're hiding so you can get out of here is, because he has
It's
them
not
locked
just
up.
it's not just the money.
Well, yeah, it's the information. That's what he wants. So that's why he does it. The thing I think is funny after this is the cops show up. They're putting Harbor into the car, and he's like, "All right, so here's the bill," and it says "follow the money." He's like, "Now come look at this." They walk all in the factory. They get to this lever. He pulls it, and it opens up, showing the bad guys in the money. Which means at some point, this a cop pulled that lever, showed the bad guys in the money. It was like, "All right, shit, close this back up. We got to reveal this when the guy comes in."
And the bad guys are sitting there handcuffed like,
Like,
what
what
the
the fuck is
fuck?
going on? Can you take us to jail? What are you doing?
This room is obnoxiously foggy. I love the line too. They're like, who the fuck is gonna count this?
Yeah, someone was pointing out that for evidence purposes, you have to know like the exact dollar amount. So,
I'll count
but
it. I'll
look,
count it and I'll charge hourly.
what's your fee?
$40 an hour.
But how much do you think you could count in an hour, though? Like, what percentage of that are you going to guarantee you could get through 10,000? Or was it in hundreds? It's probably in hundreds.
Yeah.
So, if you can't get through 10,000, then you're a fucking moron in an hour. It's like
You're
it's
counting.
like that's like 2 bills a set, less than 2 bills a second. So the next
Eh.
scene, Teddy is in a restaurant with this dude. He's like, Pushkin's really coming down on him. He's got these new muscle that are coming in, and the guy's like, "I'm gonna go take a piss." And then Denzel walks up, and he's like, "He's not coming back." And he basically tells Teddy the story of Teddy's childhood, about how Teddy was brought in by this guy,
Dude, that's crazy.
but he ended up killing the guy because he didn't want to be abandoned again. So rather than being abandoned, he killed the guy. Um, And then Denzel's like, I gave your men a choice before I killed them. I'm giving you one. He's like, before this, he's like, I'll tear this place down brick by brick, dollar by dollar, or call your boss and have him shut down tonight. And Teddy's like, that's not much of an offer. Like, my guy's not going
It's
to do
the
that.
only offer you're getting.
So he then sends all the evidence to the FBI. He then I forgot about this. I forget about this scene every time. He sends all the evidence. Then he's like, oh, that's a tanker. So he goes and blows up a fucking oil tanker.
So yeah, I guess they own that company.
He's an oligarch. He's a Russian oligarch. So they generally have like, there's one of them is an oil guy. One of them is like this and that. So yeah, he's the oil guy.
Gotcha.
And then Pushkin gets even more pissed. And now we're like basically at the final showdown. And Teddy calls him and he's like, "We've taken your coworkers, so you
Re-
have to come to the boatyard right now."
Remind me real quick, what operation did they have where they found all that laundered money? What was the cover for that?
Probably drugs. I don't know. What the cover? I don't know what the cover was. It was just a factory with money. I don't know.
You know, they showed them making something, but I can't remember. I don't know if you remembered.
Think it was important to the plot.
I was just wondering. I was curious. Because that means he owns the oil rig and like a shoe company. So I was just like, that's kind
I
of
mean, they
funny.
said he has a huge base of operations in like both coasts. So yeah, I mean, he's he's diversified his portfolio.
Yeah,
Um,
good for him. Yeah, I one of the scenes I love about that, one of the lines I love about this next scene is he's like, I I want you to meet me. He goes, meet me where you last were or something. He goes, it still smells like burning gasoline here.
yeah. So this is what I want to bring up is they're then tracking his cell phone. How are they tracking his cell phone?
Okay. Um uh it's called Find My Phone. It's an app.
Okay. As funny as that joke is, I don't get it.
And the Boston PD has access to everyone's phone within the
That's
Boston
also not true. What are they?
area.
The Batman from Dark Knight? Yeah, I don't. It doesn't make sense to me. It's definitely not explained in the movie. But whatever. So he leaves his phone on the bus, and they think he's showing up to the boatyard, but instead he just goes. He goes to the Home Mart where they've only sent two guys, and so he immediately neutralizes them. A funny little part of this
You
is
mean he equalizes them?
yeah, that too. The funny part of this is they're about to execute a hostage because he doesn't show up, and then Midnight Train to Georgia starts playing, sung by Gladys Knight and the Pips. Which is a callback to when he saves the
I
Pip.
I made that connection also.
This is the first time I made that connection. And then he snaps the dude's neck right in front of Ralphie, and Ralphie's like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
And then
Also,
Teddy shows up.
um, Denzel systematically takes out all of these dudes, but before he does so, as he's like waiting for them to like come, because he knows they're coming, right? He knows they're arriving any second. He's home aloneing the shit out of this Home Depot. I guess you
Absolutely,
could say that he's Home Depot alone.
it's a Home Mart. It's not a Home Depot.
Whatever. It's a fake. It's a fake home repair store.
I wonder which one it actually was. It looks
It looks
like a
more
Home
like
Depot.
Lowe's.
Does it?
It has a garden section. Well, I guess Home Depot has a garden section.
Yeah, it could be a Walmart. Who knows?
I don't think so. That
It
it's not
wasn't.
very Walmarty. Um. So the gravel on the ground so that he can hear them coming, and then the barbed wire noose, just dude, and the way he was up there in the rafters as the barbed wire guy is being hung,
And then he's just
gnarly.
staring. Yeah, he's staring at him as he dies. I mean, that's like straight out of a horror movie, right? And that's Dan Bilzerian, who's just like a Instagram dude who like flaunts his cash and plays poker and just has like women with big titties all over his Instagram. Like he
That's
like
him.
has yeah, that was him.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah, he gets like every once in a while he gets these roles where he gets killed as a henchman. So um he then drills in a dude's skull, which I don't logistically understand because the guy, it's like, it's not as if the guy is prevented from moving forward as the drill's touching his head. So, like, how did that,
Right.
and how does the drill just go in? Like, I don't know. I need, what's that science show where they test things out?
Oh, Mythbusters.
Mythbusters. Yeah, we need Mythbusters if you can drill through a human skull, like in this movie. I don't know how
Dude,
you
did he kill
recreate
him?
that.
Did he kill him, or did he just give him like a lobotomy?
Yeah, he's just like, I'm a nicer guy now.
that's,
Um,
that's the effect. Not like total paralysis, but like, I see a new outlook on life.
So he kills the dude in the mirror fight, and then there's the exploding microwave, and then Teddy's chasing down Ralphie. Ralphie stayed back to help save him, which is his security guard arc full circle.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not.
this
I guess an
callback.
arc. An arc isn't a circle.
It's
It's
this
just a
callback to
rainbow.
him. It's his callback to pulling the tire. He's like a buck 90 my ass.
So Pushkin's about to shoot Ralphie. Ralphie can't shoot him, and then a fucking nail goes through not Pushkin. Teddy. Teddy turns around, and we have the coolest of cool guy walks in the rain, the water that's being sprayed all over the store, just with the music blaring. And then he shoots him more and more. And then Teddy says, "Who are you?" And it is a full minute of slow mo before he does the kill shot into Teddy. Just like really hamming up this moment. Too much to me.
There's the moment where he walks out from the aisle and the rain is pouring down, and I'm pretty sure they use it as the cover of the DVD, and that felt a bit too much for me.
Yeah.
He's like
But
backlit by the I don't know. Yeah.
so then I guess he doesn't work at the Home Mart anymore. It then cuts to Russia and says 3 days later. So he didn't even take a break, right? Like to fly to Russia from Boston, that's like there's some layovers. That's like he went straight to the airport to go right to Pushkin's house. He didn't even have time to do any more like surveillance. He's just like, all right, I just got to go kill this guy. And I do like, we've talked about this in the movies. He just ends up in Pushkin's bathroom. He electrocutes him. He kills him.
I guess
And
you
then
could say he's Pushkin up daisies.
Why are you like this? So then he starts walking through the house, and you see all the guards he's killed. Logistically, the bodies don't make sense the way that they are situated. So, like, when he comes down the stairs, there's a guy who's like on the side of the stairs, like as if he was shot. Instead of being shot from the bottom of the stairs as he's making his way up, so he'd be against the back wall, he's against the side wall. And then when he comes out, out of the house, there's two dudes. One has been shot against the car to the right, and the other's been shot against the car to the left. And I'm like, so where did he come from to kill those guys so they got shot back in those different directions?
It's just called being a badass, and like you told me before, stop asking so many questions.
I mean, I still love the movie. So after this, we get a final scene with Alina where she's like, "Oh, I got $9,800. It's probably hush money, ha ha ha." But I'm gonna take it. He's like, good for you. And then he starts a Craigslist ad service. Which do people use Craigslist now?
So
I haven't been on Craigslist in
by
forever.
the way, this movie is 10 years old.
I know.
There's this seed that I planted at the beginning of this episode, if you remember. Do you remember?
Just go.
So here's the parallel that I found so cool. It actually had me tearing up a bit. When he goes to Slavy, whatever. When he goes to Slavy to give him the $9,800, Slavy keeps calling it $9,000, and Denzel keeps correcting him for it's 9,800. It's 9,800, and he keeps like obnoxiously saying 9,000 like it's nothing. Like he keeps like disparaging it, right?
Yeah.
At the end, when Alina has the money, she says almost 10,000. And it's this parallel where it's like at the beginning, the bad guy is like shitting on like how little it is, but she's saying it like she's wording it like this is a lot of money. And I thought that was really good. Like that was really cool, like detail writing. Give the writers a pat on the back for that one.
I mean, I don't even know if it was purposeful, but yeah, it was good. This movie is a lot of fun with a lot of that doesn't make sense if you think about it too much. It's definitely like the more you watch it, the more you pick up on that stuff. But at the same time, he shoots somebody with a nail gun. He hangs someone by a barbed wire noose.
Dude, did he like stab someone with a hedge cutter through his neck at one point?
Yeah. He then the scene with the glass, like I don't know, it's just such a badass movie. Like I'm just, I'm glad you finally get to experience it.
Yeah, me too. It's different. It's much in the same where I thought it was gonna be, and then in some aspects I was like, oh, it's actually not how I thought this would end. And there's a scene when he's talking to Bill Pullman and his wife, and she's like, say goodbye before you leave. And he, like, under his breath, he's like, goodbye. Really makes you think he's planning to like do this as like a man on fire situation where he's planning to kill himself and or be killed by the end of this. But the fact that this spawns 2 more sequels, it's just like you're not worried about the Equalizer at all.
Yeah, I mean, it is similar to like a John Wick or a, like they're not going to die. Like that's not really the point of these movies.
There was one thing I was really disappointed in is that he never killed anyone, and he went like with an equation. Like I wanted him to be like 1 + 1 = 2.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and I finally watched The Equalizer.